Let's start. Any questions today after our first practice here relative to Tampa?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
What has impressed you the most about Zach Allen's past?
Well, one of the things when I think of him and watch his tape, he's consistent. He's got real good staying power. Play 16 and play 48 look the same. It's hard to do at that position. I'd say he's a pressure player. In other words, he can be someone that can affect the quarterback, and then I'd say handle the run as well. So the consistency and his stamina are two things that come to mind.
With Glitchy going on IR, then how do you sort of deal with his loss for at least the next few weeks?
Yeah, and look, respectfully to your question, that hadn't happened yet, but that's going to happen.
What the wire is just now.
Okay. I got it. Who'll play in his place? Was that your question? Palco.
Yeah, Palcho.
Yeah, Palcho will take those snaps. Yeah.
And just from a leadership perspective, does that matter in a huddle or in a game week, losing a guy?
Oh, look, it's part of our league, and certainly Mike's a veteran, and now, Palcho's one of those guys that he's been competing, and I think, we'll be smart relative to what we're doing protection-wise, but he's played in a lot of football games, and look, I know we'll be excited about his first start.
And how about Baron Browning?
No other news on the injuries.
How about just in general? I mean, you've McGlinchey, Franklin Myers, and Baron Browning. How tough is that injuries in general that you're having?
I think it's relative to our game. Some weeks are cleaner than others, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to go through our roster.
When you look at a Todd Bowles defense, what kind of stands out to you about the challenges that he?
So, man, we've seen. Obviously, we've played a lot of games, competed against Todd. I worked with him in Dallas for 3 years. He does a great job as a head coach, and then defensively, there's a lot you have to prepare for. They play the run very well. They're a multiple pressure package type defense. They can, pressure you weak, strong. They did a good job last week in near the end of that game, just playing coverage and keeping the ball in front of them and tackling well. So they're well coached defensively, and they're well coached as a football team. I consider him a good friend, and someone who's done a good job there.
Sean, can you just go through your thinking on just making this trip the way it is, the logistics of it?
Yeah, before we get the assignments, when we see a series of East Coast games, we'll put in a request for 2 of the East Coast games to be back-to-back, and so when the schedule came out, then, hey, it happened to be Tampa and the Jets. It could have been Baltimore, and the reason we put the request in is just to stay in that time zone, practice, and then be more acclimated relative to back and forth 4 different times.
Do you obviously took the Saints to the Greenbrier?
The setup will be fine there, yeah. The facility and all of that will be fine, but it was more about, we looked at a handful of places. It was just going to be dependent on who the back-to-back teams were. I do like being away for a week with the team. In other words, when we travel to London, or those are times that you get a little bit better focus, I think, and you can grow as a team. So, each game will have different challenges. I just finished talking about the entirety of the travel, but the focus obviously starts with the first trip, and then we go from there.
Go
ahead.
Speaking of the acclimation period, do you do anything different this week to prepare for morning earlier?
Yeah, it's not so much when we practice. When we're traveling, there'll be a few things that we do different relative to the time adjustment. Temperature-wise, I think it's mid-80s now. It'll be more humid, so we've got to be plenty hydrated and be on top of that. But, we feel like we have a good plan. Go ahead.
You just used the term grow as a team. Can you talk about the growth of the last couple of weeks and what specifically it means to you at this point?
Yeah, look, in 2 weeks, it's hard to measure any growth. So it's hard to answer that question. Obviously, you want to win, and you want to put yourself in a position to win. And so I think that's a work in progress right now.
Sean, what's DeAndre Tillman doing? What do you like about his game?
He's doing fine. He's someone who's strong and good at the point of attack, and he's been getting reps throughout training camp. He's doing a good job.
You talked about how the quarterback position is different in college than the NFL, obviously. But what about climbing the pocket specifically? Is that one of the last things to come, or even?
No, I think. Listen, I think he's comfortable in the pocket, and we've seen him climb the pocket countless times. But I think that consistency relative to the pocket is important for any young player. In other words, and so ultimately in our league, you can get outside, mobile quarterbacks, we see it all the time, but ultimately there are times where we got to win from the pocket, and we've seen that from him, and so tonight will be third down. There aren't many designed out of pocket third, occasionally depending on down and distance you can do that, but he functions well in the pocket.
The follow-up of that would be, when you watch the O-line, when we talk to some of the players who say it's like 9 or 10 guys doing it right, one off, is that what you're seeing, or what are you seeing with what's going on up front?
Listen, I think we've been pretty good in protection, but at times, look, if we're pointing to our point production, our red zone production, our third down production, we've got to all be better, and so that's what I'm seeing.
Sean, what do you think of Baker coming out? What do you think of his kind of bounce back after up and down?
Yeah, listen, it's happened maybe 3 or 4 times, I think, with first rounders, 3 or 4 times with second rounders. And I remember doing that study prior to signing Zach. Look, he's tough, he's competitive, he loves playing football. I've gotten to know him, over in the off season, on one trip, just a place that we ended up being at the same place. Good person, and is very competitive, and is playing very well.
Coach, you mentioned Zach. When you see also where Sam Darnold is right now, I guess, is that encouraging for someone like Zach who's had a...
Well, it's happened a lot over the years. I mean, when I was first coordinating at the Giants, we had Kerry Collins, who was a first-round pick, and had kind of reborn, or if you will, found new life in his career, and so history shows that it can happen. I mean, it happened with Breeze, actually. So, obviously it's an important position. A lot of energy and effort goes into, and resources goes into drafting and acquiring quarterbacks, and so I think that, it's something that's important for your franchise.
With Cortland, he got a ton of targets week 1, maybe not quite as many week 2. What does it take to get him just in a rhythm in terms of, production?
Yeah, I think early on, look, he plays X, but he can play other spots. And I think, a lot of it is it gets back to the third downs. Tonight will be game plan and third down, and we have to be better in that area to have more snaps, throughout the course of the game.
What did you come away with? You mentioned Monday, maybe too many personnel groupings. What did you come away with?
Yeah, I think reducing the variables can help, and it's something that I think you have to look at as a coach. You have to start, all right, what can we do better? And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit. How do we reduce the variables? And then who's doing it? Those 2 things I would point to.
Is there a unique, just the challenge having Bo and going through it for the first time, just with the fact that there's not that many defensive-minded head coaches in the NFL, and you've got about 4 of them in a row?
Yeah, I don't if the coach, let's say, has an offensive background, well, he's got a defensive coordinator who's defensive minded. I don't think that relative to strategy and game planning, there are other elements to that that may prove to be true.
Just for veteran defensive coaches that he's obviously.
Yeah. I understand, and yet. I think it is what it is. Meaning, I think that it still gets back to the players and in those positions. So, all right, thank you.